Hi, it's Kaylee from Crochet Unraveled, and today I wanted to give you some tips to help you make sure that your crochet tension is really consistent so when your projects are finished they turn out exactly how you want them to. So this took me a while to figure out how exactly to do this, so now I want to share what I've learned with you so that your projects turn out great as well. If you're excited to get started, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and let's go ahead and get into it.
So the first thing you're going to do to make sure that you are crocheting with consistent tension and controlling your tension is to just pull a lot of yarn from your ball or skein. This way you aren't fighting with the skein, and which can create a little bit of tighter stitches if you're pulling too hard to get that yarn out. So we just want it to be able to flow nice and loosely and freely when you're crocheting. Just gonna go ahead and create a slip knot really quick so I can demonstrate this for you. Okay, so you want to choose a way to hold your yarn using your non-dominant hand, and this should feel comfortable and natural to you. So if you haven't already, make sure that you go watch my video on how to crochet or how to hold your yarn when crocheting, and then pick a way or a couple ways that you want to try out and you think that will be comfortable for you. But this is how I hold my yarn. So I just have it going over my ring finger, under my middle finger, and then back over my pointer finger, and then I can move my pointer finger and help to guide the yarn where I need it to go. Okay, so using your dominant hand, now that you've picked the method that you're going to use to hold your yarn, use your dominant hand and pull on that yarn. Now if your yarn is pulling this quickly, chances are you're going to be crocheting a little bit too loosely. But if you're having a hard time pulling your yarn through, it may be that you're going to be crocheting too tightly. So what you want, this is kind of how it should look when you are pulling on that yarn. It's moving freely, but it's not just sliding through. And I'm also not struggling to pull on the yarn. So hopefully that makes sense. If you're having trouble with that, just go ahead and change up the way that you're holding your yarn in your non-dominant hand. There are certain methods that maybe it goes around your finger or around your pinky is one. And maybe that's good for you, but maybe that loop around your pinky kind of gets caught, and that doesn't allow you to crochet freely. So in that case, I would change it up a little bit and do something else. Maybe you go like this and just have it flow over your pinky instead of wrapping around, and that would work a little bit better. But this just has to do with what works for you and what feels the most comfortable when you are crocheting, because everyone is different and everyone's going to teach you something different, which is why I want to give you multiple options, because I know that what works for me may not work for you, and you really get into these habits of doing things. So I want you to, when you're learning to crochet, or even now if you're switching things up, I want you to get into a good habit that helps you to crochet in a way where you have nice and even and consistent tension, so your projects look really, really good when you're done with them. A couple of potential mistakes that could be made. When I was first learning how to crochet, I did this a lot, and it resulted in one of my projects being about half the size that it was supposed to be. So I was crocheting a shawl, and it should have been really, really long and been able to like drape around my shoulders, but when I was done with it, it probably would have been the right size for a 5 or 6 year old. But here's what I did. So when I crocheted, I would pull tight after every stitch. And you can see how, you know, I start with a stitch that is that size, kind of guided by the hook size, and then I would pull it tight, and now it's tiny. And not only did that mess up my gauge and make it just way too small, it really hurt my forearm right here. I was pulling on it after every stitch. So don't do that. Instead, let your hook size guide how big your stitches are. So how you can tell you're doing the right tension is there should be a little gap right there, and your hook should just be able to flow right through it. You see how that's about the same size as the hook? That means your tension should be pretty much on point when you can just turn your hook and glide it through there. See, now I have a little bit of space where you can see the air again, and you want that to be the right size on every stitch that you do. So use the head of your hook to guide you if you aren't sure. It should be able to, as you're turning, this is why we turn the hook to pull those stitches through, is because it fits perfectly right through that little hole right there. Another mistake that could be made is not crocheting a gauge swatch when it's needed. And what this is basically a way for you to determine if your tension is correct. And this is common in patterns like clothing. You really want your sweater to be the right size when you're finished with it. Even blankets, a lot of patterns put a crochet or a gauge swatch on it, and they'll give you instructions. Typically you crochet something that is 4 by 4 inches, and it should be the correct number of stitches across and then the correct number of rows, and that when you're done you should measure it, and it should be 4 inches by 4 inches. That's what they typically ask for. But follow the instructions on your pattern and just do what it says, and make sure that when you're done with your swatch that it measures to be the right length and height for the type of stitch that you're doing. And then third mistake that you can make is not practicing this. So I suggest that you buy a skein of yarn that you don't care about. Yarn can be really, really cheap. Buy a skein that's about $3 or $5 or whatever it may be. They're always on sale somewhere. And then just use that skein and a correct size hook that goes with that skein, and just practice. Just go, crochet a long rectangle, crochet a wide rectangle. Just do something that is repetitive, and so you get the feeling for how I need to hold my yarn. This is how I need to move my hook, and this is the correct tension that is easy to crochet with. I'm not trying to force my hook into these stitches because they're too tight. It's not too loose and there aren't tons of gaps. But that will really help you to just make sure that this is second nature. And when you're crocheting a project that you really care about and you really want it to look good, then you won't even have to think about it.
Okay, so now that you've learned the tips on how to keep your crochet tension consistent, it's time to go practice. You may not get it right away, but make sure that you continue practicing. Maybe get some cheap yarn that you don't really care about, and just keep going until the result looks like how you want it to. Alright, if this video helped you out, make sure that you hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. And I really hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.